Welcome to a Legendarium special in which we will answer the question, who were the Pilgrims? In this special, we will talk about the roots of Puritanism and why some Puritans chose to separate not only from the Church of England, but England entirely. The roots of Puritanism are found in the English Reformation. During the 1530s, King Henry VIII repudiated papal authority and transformed the Church of Rome into the state-run Church of England. To some, the Church of England retained too much of the liturgy and ritual of Roman Catholicism. Well into the 16th century, many priests remained barely literate and often very poor. Employment by more than one parish became common, so the priests moved often, which kept them from forming deep roots in the communities they should have led. Priests also enjoyed immunity from some laws, which made them even more resented and isolated. In part because of this, the Puritan movement continued to grow. Puritans differed with one another in how much they should change the English church and how it should be governed. Yet they set themselves against state and church authority in the name of God. They objected to the Book of Common Prayer, the Anglican church hierarchy, and the use of incense and music in worship services. Puritans saw a world drowning in sin, and they fought against any popular entertainment they judged sinful. They objected to the popular pastime of bear baiting, in which men let a dog loose in a pen to attack a chained bear. Puritans also protested dogfights, cockfights, and theaters, often located in the same part of town as brothels, and which hired actors of questionable morals. Anglicans originally used the term Puritan to insult those they claimed were too easily offended by the liturgy of the Anglican Church. They further accused dissidents of nitpicking at details and causing trouble, and then justifying their efforts through proof texting the Bible. Others portrayed Puritans as hypocrites who cheated the very neighbors whom they judged inadequate Christians. Puritans did not use the term to refer to themselves, mainly calling one another saints. Additionally, the Puritan attack on the established church gained popular strength in East Anglia and among the lawyers and merchants of London, in part because it also protested a government dominated by the landed aristocracy. Along with the spiritual upheavals caused by the Reformation, the transition from a feudal to a market economy created other problems. Subsistence peasant farmers found themselves forced to raise crops for profit. Under the rule of primogeniture, younger sons tended to leave the family's manor house and enter the urban professions, especially the law. The English countryside became plagued by scavengers, highwaymen, and vagabonds. This newly visible underclass, since the reformers dissolved the monasteries, had no place to go because the monks gave hospitality and charity to the destitute and indigent. These economic and spiritual upheavals taken together led many to believe that the world would soon end and the second coming of Christ would soon occur. During the early decades of the 17th century, a struggle over the shape of the English church continued. Within the church, some reformers objected to things they found too Catholic with hammers, which they used to smash railings around the communion loaf, whitewash paintings off the walls, and tear apart altarpieces. Meanwhile, other groups of radicals separated themselves from their local churches where they found the preaching inadequate. Instead, they engaged energetic lecturers, typically young and lively speakers steeped in Reformed theology and often with a fresh Cambridge degree in theology. Some congregations went further, separating themselves from the national church entirely and forming what they called communities of visible saints in a self-proclaimed city of God. They even took the extreme step of denouncing the English church as a false church, an enemy of God and a servant of the Antichrist. Puritans published illegal tracts, pamphlets, and broadsides denouncing the Anglican Church and promoting Puritanism. Like-minded pastors condemned the king for not taking a harder line against Catholic kingdoms during the 30 Years' War. Unsurprisingly, these activities did not endear the Puritans to the authorities, since the king also served as head of the church. One such faction included a group of Separatist believers in the Yorkshire village of Scrooby. Because of their denunciation of the church, they had to meet in secret nighttime gatherings. Fearing for their safety, they moved to Holland in 1608 and then in 1620 to the place they called Plymouth in New England. We know them now as the Pilgrims of Plymouth Rock. A decade later, a larger and better financed group from East Anglia migrated to Massachusetts Bay. There they set up churches on the same model as the transplanted church in Plymouth. They included deacons, preaching elders, and a communion restricted to full church members or saints. To be considered a saint, a member had to describe in vivid detail a revelation from God which delivered them from Satan. After hearing the story, the congregation would then decide whether or not they should be accepted into the church. By the 1640s, their enterprise centered on Massachusetts Bay had grown to about 10,000 people. They soon outgrew the bounds of the original settlement and spread into what would become Connecticut, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Maine. As the religious movement in New England grew more diverse through splits or immigration, Puritanism became more of a lifestyle than a religion. It emphasized self-reliance, moral sturdiness, tenacity, and austere living. These beliefs gradually evolved into a secular lifestyle still regarded as distinctly New England. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.